What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Lions video. Now, the NFL draft has come and gone. We've talked about this class a ton already as of recently. However, the Detroit Lions, although they have their new class of rookies, although they have their new flashy toys and their new flashy players that everybody wants to talk about, the fact remains that there are a lot of players from the 2020 NFL class that are not being talked about, and players from the 2020 class that are already being thrown aside and being forgotten about. Now, in today's video, I want to look at these sophomore players. Look at these players going into their sophomore year, players from the 2020 class that didn't quite perform up to expectation, right? You have, of course, the players like DeAndre Swift, like John Pennicini, and even arguably like Quintez Cephas, who played up to a very high level a season ago and really exceeded expectations more than anything in their rookie season. However, there are, of course, some players that in this rookie class or from the last rookie class that didn't quite live up to their expectations, whether it be from injury, lack of playing time, or just being put in poor situation over and over and over again. Some players from the 2020 class didn't quite live up to expectation or live up to the hype. However, with new coaching staffs, with new coaching schemes, and with these players getting a second chance in 2021, these players may just break out and surprise the NFL and Detroit Lions franchises alike. Now, in today's video, these are the players that we are going to be talking about, players that are going into their second year, players that underperformed in year one, and players that could have big breakout seasons and have sophomore standout seasons in 2021. However, before we get into it, if you are new to the channel and you are enjoying the content, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It takes 2 seconds of your day to do so. It's quick, free, and easy, and you would be helping the channel out more than you could possibly know. So if you could do that, take those 2 seconds to like and subscribe. I'd be greatly appreciative for it. But all of that being said, without any further ado, let's get right into talking about these potential sophomore standouts.
So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! Now, there is no other way that we could start this video other than talking about the former 3rd overall pick himself, Jeff Okudah. Now, Jeff Okudah actually didn't play horribly a season ago. He played in 9 games for the Detroit Lions in 2020, totaling 47 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 passes defended, and an interception, while playing in one of the most difficult situations in one of the most difficult years a player has ever had to endure. Jeff Okudah, like all of these players, did not have OTAs, really did not have a training camp, did not have a preseason, and was not really utilized a whole lot or utilized correctly very often a year ago. Now, Jeff Okudah, on top of all of those hindrances, was injured. He had a groin injury and I believe an ankle injury throughout the entire season, which is why he only played in 9 games. And in the 9 games that he ended up playing, it was not an easy go-around. In his first ever game, he was put on an island versus Devontae Adams. In his second game, he was put on an island versus DeAndre Hopkins, where he actually came up with an interception, by the way. A couple weeks later, he was matched up against both Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley in one-on-ones. A couple weeks after that, he was placed up against Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, both in one-on-ones. A couple weeks after that, you had Scary Terry one-on-one versus Mr. Jeff Okudah. And then a week after that, you had DJ Moore, one of the better, more underrated wide receivers in the NFL from the Carolina Panthers, that was once again on an island with Jeff Okudah. Now, Jeff Okudah, as I said, was not really put in the best situation. The scheme did him absolutely no favors, and the scheme actually hurt him more than it helped him. He was I don't want to say injury prone, but Jeff Okudah definitely was struggling with a couple of injuries a season ago. So with that, with the lack of preparation, with the injury, with the scheme deficiencies, there was really, if Jeff Okudah had succeeded, I would have been more surprised than anything else, because all the odds were stacked against Jeff Okudah. No training camp, no preseason, really very little preparation, struggling with injuries, struggling with a poor coach and a poor scheme. Everything was rooting against Jeff Okudah. Everything was contributing against Jeff Okudah in his rookie season. And for that, there's really no shock that Jeff Okudah didn't quite live up to expectation. There's no reason to be surprised that Jeff Okudah did not have like an all-worldly rookie season like maybe a couple guys in past years, right? Jeff Okudah had all the odds stacked against him, and looking at all that, looking at the receivers that he played against, looking at the situation he was in, I actually think Jeff Okudah played okay for the time he was actually in. I expect Jeff Okudah to have a really big bounce back season this year. I expect him to take a huge step forward as a second year player. The scheme is better, the coaches are better, he's healthier, and I do believe that his receiving schedule is going to be a little bit lighter. Not so much later, of course, you still got to play Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, and Allen Robinson. However, I will say that his receiver schedule outside of the division, I think, is a little bit lighter than it was a season ago, which should also help him take a couple of steps forward. Not to mention the pass rush should be better this year, which it was not a season ago, which again should help Jeff become a far better player. The second player we're going to be talking about today is actually the guy that inspired this video, and a former third round pick from 2020, Julian OConnor. Now, Julian OConnor was very injury riddled as a rookie. He only played in 6 games, and really in those games only received 100 total snaps between the defense and the special teams together. I believe had 69 snaps on the defense and had 30 something on special teams. He only played 100 total snaps or 99 total snaps on the entire season for the two sides, which isn't really a lot when it comes to rookies, and especially when it comes to a third round rookie. 100 snaps is not a lot of playing time for a guy that you invested a early third round selection in. So with that being said, Julian OConnor definitely did not live up to expectations. He had a couple pressures early, did have a couple really close sacks, and almost had a couple sacks early in the season, but did get hurt and kind of struggle with injuries the rest of the way. Now, Julian OConnor is very skilled. He is skilled, he has a lot of potential, and he's a very versatile player. His highlights and his film at Notre Dame will tell you exactly what you need to know. Julian OConnor can be a real threat. Julian OConnor can be a versatile player, and Julian OConnor can be a really disruptive player at every level. He's athletic, he's versatile, and has super high upside for a third round, I guess now sophomore player. Julian OConnor did not really get an opportunity a season ago, but I think he will this year. I think that he's going to be experimented with. We're going to see him a lot more in the preseason, get a lot more time, and I believe Julian OConnor is going to be a preseason standout. I think he's a guy that is going to look really good in preseason, is going to look really good against probably backup tackles and backup guards. He's going to be a guy that has moved around from linebacker to defensive end. He's going to be a guy that's kind of moved and, put in different situations and different roles to kind of see where he fits best. And I believe with his athleticism, with his, mindset, he's talked about getting back on the field and talked about getting way better this offseason, and really just his athletic potential and prowess with the new defensive line coach that's going to help him kind of refine the technical side of his game. I really believe Julian OConnor is another guy that can take a big step forward, very similarly to all of these players that we will talk about today. Now, Logan Stenberg, the 4th round selection from 2020, is in a very similar situation. He was not injured a season ago, but he was a healthy scratch, I believe, every single week except for one. For 15 of the 16 games, he was a healthy scratch, and for that 16th game, he was at the field, he was on the sideline, but never got an opportunity to get on the field and go play. With that being said, it's very hard to evaluate Logan Stenberg. He's a guy that I thought was going to have a big role. He's a guy that I thought we were going to at least be able to see by the end of the 2020 season. That, of course, did not happen. But very similarly to Julian OConnor, Logan Stenberg has a lot of athletic upside. He has a lot of potential. He's a guy that didn't play much, but a guy that is very nasty. In the run game, his nickname was Mr. Nasty. I mean, he is a mean, nasty run blocker. He's a guy that's going to push people. He enjoys just being aggressive and absolutely moving people off their line. He's a guy that loves the game of football. He's a guy that has a great mindset, great athleticism, incredible strength, and is a guy that in the preseason I think is going to be a big standout on that backup or reserved offensive line. And I think is a guy that by the end of the season may be pushing Big V for a starting spot, depending on how much progression he's actually made from the technical side of the game. Now, another player that I not necessarily disappointed a season ago, but a guy that I think is going to have a big sophomore season is wide receiver Quintez Cephus, the 5th round pick. Now, Quintez Cephus a season ago played in 13 games for the Lions and started 2. He had 20 receptions for 349 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is not a bad production. It is not bad production at all for a 5th round wide receiver. However, Cephus' role was limited a season ago. Of course, you had Kenny Galladay when he was healthy. You had Marvin Jones when he was healthy. You had Danny Amendola and Marvin Hall and a couple other guys that were going to take priority over a 5th round rookie wide receiver, regardless of how impressive he was at minicamp and training camp. Now, Quintez Cephus is a guy that has been really impressive early in training camp. This season, going into his 2nd year, has that chip on his shoulder, wants more playing time, and is going to receive more playing time now that Kenny is gone, now that Marvin is gone, now that Marvin Hall is gone, and now that Danny Amendola is also no longer on the team, Quintez Cephas' role is going to grow. Quintez Cephas' role is going to get much larger, and with that larger role and more of a target share, Quintez Cephas, I believe, is going to be a really big playmaker for this team. He showed flashes a season ago, had a couple really good catches, runs really good routes, and created very good separation. Had some dropping issues a season ago, which definitely need to be fixed, but his potential is there. We saw his potential a season ago, and he's a guy that I have no doubt can be a really good player and can be one of Goff's favorite weapons as far as wide receivers when it comes to 2021. And then the final player that I think could have a really big sophomore campaign is a guy that didn't play at all last season. Jashon Cornell, the 7th round defensive tackle out of Ohio State, is a guy that tore his Achilles in the first week of camp. It might have even been the first day of camp where he tore his Achilles and was therefore done for the season. However, just because he was injured a season ago doesn't mean that Jashon Cornell doesn't have any talent or doesn't have any athletic upside. Jashon Cornell in his last year at Ohio State had 30 total tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks, in a very reserved role and in a very role player-esque role in 2019 for the Buckeyes. Of course, Chase Young was on that roster. He was getting all the flash, he was getting all the hype, while Jashon Cornell worked in the background and had some really solid production as a rotational player. Now, Jashon Cornell is sitting out the first 3 games of the season. He's been suspended for the first 3 games for, I believe, abusing the NFL substance abuse policy. I'm not going to get into that. That's not my place, and that is not, that is not what I'm here to talk about. Jashon has already apologized several times over on Twitter and on Instagram and on his social medias. He shared his story. If you are curious, go check it out. That's not my place to talk. So if you were curious, go check it out. But Jashon Cornell is suspended the first 3 games. However, I believe even with the tough road ahead, even with, Levi in front of him and Aleem in front of him and, Deshaun Hand and Austin Bryant and really a lot of really young and talented defensive linemen, I do think Jashon Cornell does still have a chance to make the roster. And if Jashon does end up making the roster, I believe he gets playing time. I believe whatever group of defensive linemen end up making the roster, they are going to get playing time and they are going to get reps and snaps for the Detroit Lions in real and actual games. I believe the rotation at defensive line is going to be furious, and I think it's going to be off, and you're going to get a lot of these talented players around the football. You're going to get a lot of these talented players on the field, and if Jashon Cornell can beat out a couple of other players and make the final roster or even make the practice squad, you may see Jashon on Sundays making plays on that defensive line as kind of the forgotten about or behind the scenes player. But with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching the video. Let me know what player you think is going to have the biggest second year standout. Let me know what player you think is going to be the best and take the biggest strides in year 2. For me, I'd have to go with Jeff Okudah, but I think Julian OConnor and the rest of these guys are going to have big steps forward as well. But with all that being said, that is all for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.